Welcome to A Day in Her Life podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Rinnick, and I am endlessly curious about how other women get it all done. In today's episode, I sit down with Caroline Allen to discuss her days. Caroline is a working mom of 2 kiddos who supports a nonprofit education prize as well as runs a new business supporting moms in the North Shore. I loved hearing about how Caroline sets up yes zones to support dinnertime chaos and reduce triggers, and how her ideal day looks pretty close to her regular days, spending half the day with her kids and half working and supporting innovators in education. Through her business, The Mom Connection, Caroline is hosting mom talks and toddler moms groups, and coming up on June 14th, she has a virtual mom talk with Dr. Jacqueline Nessie, a clinical psychologist and assistant professor at Brown University. I have RSVP'd, and I am so excited to join and hear about technology and our kids. I really appreciated sitting down with Caroline and learning about how she structured her days to allow her to have her ideal day every week. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, Caroline. I hope you all love the episode. Let's have some fun. Welcome to A Day in Her Life podcast. Today, Caroline Allen is joining me to talk about a day in her life. Welcome, Caroline.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. So for those who don't know, Caroline and I did a NAPS training program for mom support group leaders together, and really excited to hear about a day in Caroline's life. All right. So Caroline, if you wouldn't mind, would you set the stage for us? Tell us who you are, what you do, what your family looks like, where you live, etc. Paint the picture.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Caroline Allen. I am a working mom to Johnny and Maeve. Johnny is 3, and he's very much 3 in every sense of the word, tantrums and all. And Maeve is 1.5. We live in Swampscott, Massachusetts, which is a small beach town in the North Shore. And so I'm a working mom, so mom first and foremost, and then I work for the Yas Prize, and I'm happy to share a little bit more about that soon. And then on the side, as Ellie mentioned, I am the founder of the Mom Connection, which is focusing on connecting moms on their parenting journey in the North Shore.
Awesome. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Yas Prize?
Yeah, so the Yas Prize was created in honor of COVID to reward and celebrate education providers who were really bucking the status quo and delivering an excellent education despite all of the challenges. We saw that nurses and doctors and the frontline workers were being honored because they were heroes during the pandemic. But there was another type of frontline worker. And those were the teachers, the education leaders who showed up to classrooms day in and day out, even though it was scary, even though we didn't know what was going on, to make sure that kids had a place to go to learn. And so 3 years later, after the Yas Prize was founded in 2021, 3 years later, we're continuing to reward and celebrate education providers who are truly redefining what pre-K to 12 education looks like. And for me, I went to school, I sat in a desk, I faced front, I listened to a teacher talk for much of my education career. There wasn't a lot of project-based learning. There weren't internships. There were like textbooks and worksheets and tests. And far too often, that was maybe 15, 20 years ago, far too often, that's still the type of education that our kids are receiving. And while that works for some, it doesn't work for many kids. And we know that because of graduation rates. We know that because of illiteracy rates.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at like the 3rd grade literacy data, the amount of kids that can't read on grade level is really traumatic, especially for kids in inner city who grow up below the poverty line. And so what the Yas Prize does is really amplify those schools who are performing, who are getting kids into the real world, who are getting kids to work with each other and collaborate and just doing really amazing things with technology without. We are sector agnostic. So we fund charter schools, public schools, private schools, home schools, micro schools, like you name it. As long as you work with students in the United States, we recognize you. So there's 64 awards this year, and applications will close July 15th. So I do everything from promotion of the prize to the judging to deciding who gets me and a team deciding who gets selected, and then all of our events and announcements in the fall. So very busy, but I love it. And I was a former teacher, so it like makes sense that I'm still like in education, but doing something very different and virtually, which has been amazing.
That's so cool. And I love your passion for it. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So, Caroline, a day in your life. Would you take us through what your mornings look like on a typical day in your life and kind of show us what goes on?
Yeah, I take a deep breath because like every day is truly so different. And so, when I was a teacher, it was much more structured because I had to be out the door a certain time. I had to have lunches packed the night before, or else it was like a complete chaotic morning. And I got home at the same time, and grocery shopping always happened on the weekends. But now that I'm not a teacher and I literally work, you know, right across from my kitchen, it's totally different. And that's the type of working environment that I really need right now. And that's what I like. So getting back to your question about mornings, Maeve usually wakes up around 7:30. Johnny has dropped his nap, so he's not a napper anymore. So he's up around like 6:45, 7. And I have this awesome pancake recipe, and we stick pancakes in the in the microwave, and that's like great for both my kids. So they eat pancakes. I usually make myself a bowl of granola in the morning, and we just kind of chill and hang out. My kids like need to eat right away.
Hmm.
So that's always what we do first thing. Then I'll usually get lunches ready and snacks and get ready to get out the door. So Johnny goes to preschool and started in March. He turned 3 and he qualified for the integrated preschool because he's speech delayed. So this is like brand new transition and transition mid-year. So we're transitioning him from daycare to preschool. So he has to be out the door by 8:40, which actually is like still a pretty good time. So we're out the door by 8:30. I usually bring Maeve with me because on Mondays and Tuesdays, I get to spend my mornings with her. So I don't work. I've crafted my contract with the Osprey so that I don't work on Mondays and Tuesday mornings. And I get to spend time with Maeve. It used to be Johnny and Maeve, but now that he's at preschool, I just spend time with Maeve. So drop Johnny off. He loves going to school. He like truly doesn't even look back. He just like walks into the building. And then I do a bunch of different things with Maeve. Sometimes we go grocery shopping. Sometimes we go to Marblehead Parenting, which is like an indoor playground. We'll go to the park, but it's really an opportunity to have that one-on-one time with her because it's often hard to come by. And it's a time to just have a little bit of a flexible work schedule, meaning that I have 2 half days and then 3 full days. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, she goes to daycare, and then Johnny still goes to preschool, and I work as much as I can for those 7 hours that I get uninterrupted.
Awesome. And on the days that you do work, what does your work day look like? Do Johnny and Maeve get dropped off nearby? What does that drop off and then transition into work look like for you?
Yeah, Johnny is his preschool is super close, like 5 minutes away, and they've just been so awesome. Again, he started mid-year, and he's pretty good with transitions, but we were nervous about it because it is a big change
Hmm.
going from like a traditional daycare to like a really more structured like learning environment of a preschool. So drop him off. Maeve's about 15 minutes away. I usually swing back. For some reason, I like always they're either a doctor appointment or like a chiropractor appointment or a dentist appointment. So like
Hmm.
sometimes that's sprinkled in there. But my days are comprised of like meeting with people. So I meet with potential applicants. I meet with events planners thinking about our events in the fall. I manage 3 people on our team. So meeting with them and supporting them, a bunch of email, like going through your email. I am someone who like it really bugs me when I have emails like at the end of the day. I don't know about you, Ellie, but like I need to try to have as clear of an inbox as possible.
Are you an inbox zero person?
Not quite. I'm at like 15 right now and it like kind of bugs me, but they're like hard emails, so I can't so it's fine. My husband, meanwhile, has like
Hmm.
15,621 emails. So he's like the complete opposite spectrum. I don't know how he does it. So it's inbox, it's email, it's also like meal prep and like finding
Hmm.
ways to like get a Caro Chambers recipe started, somehow manage to make my lunch. It goes by really quick.
Hmm.
And I find that because I like don't really sit down at my seat until like 9:15. And then I have to be back up and getting the kids around 2:30. We pick them up Johnny gets out at 2 and Maeve gets out at 3. And so I always find that moms have to work really, really efficiently. And so like I work a 40-hour week, but it's not consecutive workflow. And
Mhm.
that was really hard for me at first to like not have like a full time to just have undevoted work time. But because spending time with my kids is so important to me and like having this flexible work life balance or as much of work life balance as possible, I'm okay with like sacrificing like a little bit of workflow. So, and just like fitting it in whenever I can.
Totally. And you mentioned your husband. Does your husband help out at all in the mornings, or is it mostly you during doing the morning routine?
Yes, my husband also works from home and
Okay.
is virtual and has been really since the pandemic. So we definitely tag team. We definitely do 50-50 in the mornings. Towards the evening, I definitely take on dinner and everything that comes with dinner, whether it's grocery shopping. It's not that I enjoy it, but he tends to have things to like kind of wrap up in the evening. But in the morning, like I'll take one kid, he'll take another in terms of getting them dressed. He'll pack lunches. So we do, ode to fair play. We don't haven't done the cards per se, like the whole
Hmm.
stack of cards, but we have like active conversations. And I feel like you need to, like, if you feel like things are unbalanced, like having that conversation in a way that's not pointing a finger, but saying like, hey, I've been really stressed in the morning because there's a lot to do. And I know you're trying to get ready for work. These are the things that I have on my plate. Like, what do you have on your plate? And where can we make sure that we're both getting what we need? And that way it's coming from a place of focusing on the I, focusing on how you're feeling, and coming up with a solution of ways that it could be more structured. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Dinner is like a whole nother story, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But we're pretty good with 50-50 in the morning.
That's awesome. I recently heard an idea of having a shared note in your phone with your husband to just put things that you think of that you need to do so that they can kind of see that workload and that invisible load that we're dealing with, which I thought was really interesting. I hadn't thought of that, and I immediately started one and shared it with my husband and added a million things to it. But we've been doing
It's
it
a,
for like 3 weeks, but it's actually been pretty helpful in like reminding to talk about things when we have those like touch points in the week that are not nightly, unfortunately, but when we actually can sit down and do stuff.
yeah, it's so true. And that invisible load is real and it's hard and it's like all consuming, meaning when the kids go to bed at 7 o'clock, it's the doctor's appointments, it's the refilling the prescription, it's the getting the birthday card or getting the baby gift, or we have a meeting for Johnny's school coming up on Thursday. So printing out the report, reading the report before we go on Thursday. I mean, it just every week, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't become less of a to-do list, but it's totally true to your point of tackling it together.
Hmm.
So I printed out the report. I gave it to my husband like 10, before we started. And I said, read the report. I'll read it after you. Like I want him a part of that. And if I don't, if we don't have that conversation or like set up those strategies, like whether it's electronically through like a phone, or whether it's I've seen these awesome Amazon things where it's a magnet that you put on your fridge and it's like a little whiteboard, right? And just like something like
Hmm.
that, a visual reminder of all the things that you have to do. You can't expect someone else to read your mind, especially your partner. Like there's too much stuff in the day. So
Yeah.
I think pick a strategy, stick with it, have that constant communication, and know that it's not going to be one conversation and done. You're going to have to keep coming back to it.
It's so iterative. We have a plexiglass whiteboard that's our my live or die by what's on the calendar. But it's an iterative process. If it's not working, figure out why and then keep going.
So true. And it's hard to like know when to have those conversations, right? Because
Not when you're heated.
not when you're heated, not when you're flooded, not when you're stressed. And also at the end of the day, it's you're not going to like dive into it. And then sometimes my husband and I will try to have like a legitimate conversation at like a mealtime, and then we're like, we'll just like let's just pause. Like you can't have a conversation a lot of times when you're with two toddlers,
Totally.
or the way that you want to have that conversation. So we often, we stick to date night, and that's when not we have like serious talks, but that's like sometimes when we'll have these, conversations that just like we have no other time to fit them in, which just sounds so silly and stupid, but time's of the essence.
Totally. All right, so you've picked up Maeve and Johnny. It's 2:33. What does your early afternoon into evening transition look like?
So because I pick them up a little bit on the earlier side, meaning they don't go to daycare till like 4 or 5, I will often jump back on at work at night, like between 7 and 8, just to like finish on my email. So some people might be asking like, how does she not work a full day? So I often jump back. But I decided to pick up me at 3:30 from daycare, 3 o'clock from daycare, because I personally felt that if I were to pick her up at 5, it's like there's so much to do. And I was feeling so stressed that I actually cut my workday a little bit short, knowing that I was going to hop back on. So now that it's nice out in Massachusetts, which is so amazing because for so long it's such crummy weather, we'll do like today we spent an hour at the park. Kids just run and just like Maeve is on the swing for literally 45 minutes and Johnny just, climbs up and down the stairs and the slide. And so we'll do the park. We'll sometimes manage a play date, but often it's really hard because like two schedules need to line up. And
Mhm.
then I'm really a stickler about dinner and starting dinner on certain times. So sometimes we do a play date if we're very, very brave. Um, but it's usually just outside time and just like me trying to like truly disconnect from work. I don't look at Slack. I don't look at my email. I'll pick up a phone call if it's an emergency and have that time before like dinner and bed and bath and all
Mhm.
that craziness, which is, not always the most fun. So, and then around like 4:30, my husband will often like start dinner. So today we did the classic hamburger and french fries. And so original and so hard, but he got the grill started. He put the french fries in. He put a pot on the stove for the green beans. And then I came home, kind of finished up the kid. That's like my hardest time of the day and probably the most stress time. I was just talking to the moms in my toddler support group. We'll talk about the mom connection, I'm sure, soon, but we were talking about triggers.
Mhm.
And I know that I've talked with you about this idea of there are things that happen throughout our day, and kids will have tantrums, kids will have big feelings, but the way that we show up and what we're triggered or not triggered by, like, often influences how you approach those situations. So if you're stressed because dinner is burning, or if you've had a long day at work, if you're like physically hot, or if you're hungry, like all of those things lead you to respond or not respond well to your kids. And so, like, if they're fighting and you're trying to get dinner ready, and maybe like your husband's on a work meeting, so you can't have his support, like that just adds to your stress and adds to your heart rate, like escalating and everything escalating. But it's important to know those triggers. Sometimes they're solvable and sometimes they're really not. So I try to create as much of a yes zone for my kids when I'm cooking dinner. I don't often do the technology because I feel like then when I take the technology away, it's like more of a it's more it's more hard for my kids than helpful at this point. But
Mhm.
I try to create in the living room like two different play zones because they're not great at working well together. I know that I saw an Instagram post that you had did about like, they're not at a place where they're like equally sharing and
Mhm.
talking about it. Like I have one verbal kid and one nonverbal kid, so it's always like just pulling. So anyway, the yes zone is this idea that basically nothing can go wrong. Like think about like like a playpen, and you put
Mhm.
like your 6 month old in the playpen, and literally nothing can go wrong. Like they can't climb out of the playpen. Nothing is in the playpen that's dangerous. Like truly nothing can go wrong. Knock on wood. And I had found I was getting so stressed because my kids would be fighting, or like the blocks would just be everywhere, or they'd be trying to leave the house, or they would be coming into the kitchen and like I was opening up the oven. Like it was just like, no, 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 stop, stop, stop. And then they're frustrated and they're hungry and I'm frustrated and I'm hungry. And so sometimes it's like Johnny like coloring, like a coloring page that I just printed out that has like his attention for 10 minutes. Or sometimes it's like Maeve reading her favorite book, like in a separate room. And so I find that really helpful because I know that's the hardest part of my day. And
Mhm.
so if I can kind of set them up for success, that helps me to manage them and set myself up for success.
I love that.
Because we eat dinner at like 5 p.m. on the dot. I'm like a really big stickler about that because I get hangry and they get hangry. And dinner, to be honest, like meal times in general are somewhat stressful only in that Johnny is a little bitty kid. He is not your picky eater. He has what's called diagnosed as low appetite. So he truly like doesn't have a lot of interest in eating, which sounds really weird. We go to all the doctors, we go to see feeding teams, we go to see the ENT. We've seen so many different people to help us with this. And one of the interventions that's been most successful is a specific type of speech therapy called myofunctional speech therapy. And it really works on speech connected with eating. So what they found through the evaluation is he has low muscle tone in his jaw. So he fatigues easily. And his tongue doesn't rest on the top of his palate. So he has some like breathing and things that if you saw him, like you wouldn't have no idea, but they're able to pull this out. So we literally go once a week to this specific therapy, and they have him like practice with Twizzlers and beef jerky and all these like hard foods to try to get him to build up stamina and be using his tongue correctly when chewing. Like it's been fascinating. And so dinner can be stressful in that my husband always like feeds and works with Johnny because he just doesn't have like he sits down and he's not a busybody, but he just doesn't really have a lot of interest in the foods, like whether it be fruit or yogurt. He's just like he won't even finish ice cream or cookies. Like he's truly survives on air. And we don't know how he does it. And then I work with Maeve, and so dinner is like 20, 30 minutes. We go up to bath. My kids spend a long time in the bath. I like let them stay there for like 30 minutes. They love it. It's a complete yes zone. Like they don't fight in the bath. They're just so calm in the bath. They love their toys in the bath. And PJs, couple bucks, and they're in bed by today. They're in bed by 6:30. They're exhausted at the end of the day. So they'll move around and wiggle around. Johnny will sometimes, push the boundary and get out of his room and come to the gate. But he's usually so tired that he just, goes right to sleep.
Are they in their own room or do they share a room?
They are in their own room.
Okay.
And we live in a 3-bedroom. But sometimes Johnny will like tiptoe to the gate, which is right by Maeve's room. And he'll be like, "Mommy." I'm like, "Your sister's
Don't wake her
sleeping.
up.
Don't wake her up." And then he thinks it's a game. So I've been just ignoring him, and he'll do it like twice and then just go to bed. But yeah, they're in their own separate rooms. And kudos to the people who have kids share a room. I know it's possible, and I know kids are better off for it, but it's not something I want to deal with right now.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Once the kids go down, what does your evening look like? How do you spend that time by yourself, with your husband, the mom connection? Tell me all the things.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's like the ideal of like what you want it to be, and then there's the reality. And the ideal is like you maybe check email for like 15 minutes and then you watch a movie with your husband, you know, talk about your day. Like I don't know. I don't know what people like that's so ideal, and it just unfortunately my husband and I talk about it all the time of getting out of the rut of just like going back on our computers for 3 hours. And the only reason I do that is because I have this like flexible work schedule. And when I'm managing people at work, I want to be able to respond to them and respond to the things that they're going to need in the morning at 9 a.m. when I'm not necessarily on because I'm with my kids at that time. And I am a type A, or as someone recently put it, a recovering type A. And so I don't always like, I know that at, 9 o'clock, at some point I have to shut down the computer. And that's definitely something I'm working on. But on Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm more likely to be on my computer from like 7 to 9. And then I'll get ready for the next day, meaning get lunches ready, look at my next day and see like what I need to be doing and what I need to be mentally preparing for, and then call it quits. And on days that I have a fuller work day, my husband and I will watch a show, or we'll try to do like a date night during the week, which is nice to switch things up. As Allie mentioned, I am the founder of the Mom Connection, and that does take up like quite a bit of time. Not as much as like it could. Like there's always so many things you can do. There's always a new Instagram post you could post, or a blog you could write, or someone you can reach out to and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. But it's definitely something that takes up time. Tomorrow night, we actually have our second Mom Talk event featuring a pelvic floor physical therapist, a chiropractor, and a Pilates physical therapist. So that's how I'll be spending my night tomorrow. And my husband's going to be coming to help take pictures. So we'll be out and probably grab a drink afterwards just to make it more of a date night. But yeah, every night looks a little different, but I'm definitely working on not just being behind a screen. And it's so much easier said than done. But if you like make a little, a goal each night or a goal each week of like, these are the 2 nights that we're just not going to log back in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best you can do. It's so hard though.
It's so hard. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Mom Connection for those who don't know, what your Mom Talk events look like, what your groups look like, and kind of how you're planning those?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are so many events in the North Shore for kids. There's awesome birthday parties, there's gymnastics classes and swim classes, like you name it, the North Shore has it. And really a lot of the, better parts of, all the parts of Boston. Like there's so many great things for kids. And what we've realized is that there's just a lack of options for moms. And options meaning time away from your kids to meet other moms. My husband and I planned a couple what we called mix and mingles. It was probably 2 years ago now. It was coming out of the pandemic. There were so many new families that had moved to Swampscott, and we wanted a place for them to meet each other. So families paid like $5. We bought a bunch of munchkins and coffee, and we met on the town lawn. And there were like 30 families. So people are really into it. But two things were the problem. One, when you're with your kids, it is very hard to have a coherent conversation with another adult.
Mm-hmm.
The kids take the precedence. They're running away, they're grabbing another munchkin, they want to go on the swing, and you're just gonna have to lead that adult conversation. And second, it was a lot of small talk. It was a lot of like, hey, who are you? When did you move here? What do you do? And then like, let's move on to the, kind of next couple, because our kids pulled us away and now we're over here. And so it was successful in that a lot of families were interested in it. But in terms of like that connection piece, I don't know. I don't think many families like exchange phone numbers and form those like true friendship connections. And so I wanted to found the Mom Connection as a way to provide support and connection to moms. And there's two different things. So I have the mom support groups, and right now I'm working with 10 toddler moms. We meet every other week, and it's an amazing opportunity for us to talk about all things toddlers and just to like meet one another and like truly have those conversations like without kids at 7:30 at night at the local YMCA. And so we're talking about sleep and tantrums and triggers and picky eating and milestones. And they've been awesome. And the moms are so great. I know that it's working because they're meeting up with each other, outside of the group. They're texting each other on their text chain. They're sharing in each other's, wins and woes of their toddler, sagas. And so I'm really excited about that. And I'm going to be doing a working moms group in the fall for any mom who identifies as a mom and identifies as working, however you define that. And then I found that some moms don't want the support group, or some moms don't have a toddler, but still want to meet other moms. Like who doesn't want to meet other moms who have similar age kids? So that was where the idea of Mom Talk came from, of a monthly event that is a really healthy dose of mingling and getting, hearing from a keynote speaker. So for my first speaker, I had former governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, his wife, Lauren Baker, who actually lives in our town. And she was so wonderful and candid and shared amazing stories of, what it was like to parent older kids during the pandemic, what it was like to have your husband be governor and really have such a hard schedule for the past 8 years. What is it like to be a new grandma? Like we covered everything, and it was such an awesome conversation. And then I'm excited about tomorrow talking about the physicality of motherhood. So it gives moms a chance to, one, get out of the house at night and do something for you. It gives moms a chance to connect with old friends or meet someone new, and then hear from a community speaker who also happens to be a mom, and learn something different, whether it's related to, politics or physical therapy or mental health or marriage. So thinking about all these topics that moms just don't have time to talk about, but they're on our minds every day.
I love that. Connection is so important. And similarly, you're building connections with lots of people through the mom connection. How do you maintain connections with your friends, or you mentioned date nights with your partner? How do you build your own personal connections when you're so busy with your job and building connections for the community as a whole? How do you make time for that?
So we have a pretty good babysitter network. So that helps with date night because that's really the biggest barrier, right? And
Hmm.
if bedtime's not going well, like our kids, thankfully, we put them down and then we go out, even if it's for 2 hours, you can get a ton out of that and like feel fulfilled. So we try to do date night, every other week, or sometimes once a week. It's really nice in the summer because we have a bunch of college kids who are back from college. So
Hmm.
that helps with babysitting. And in terms of friends, I mean, it's definitely something I'm working on because oftentimes, like work and kids and mom connection and everything else will come first. I have some friends who are just like model friends. I don't know if that's like a weird way to put it, but they just like do such a great job of like reaching out. And I always try to like reciprocate in terms of like being that first one to call, but it's hard.
Hmm.
And you don't want to get into a rhythm where you're just like texting all the time. So I have a bunch of friends in Swampscott and we'll do play dates. We actually started like a Friday dinner party thing where we bring our kids. It's like 6 adults, 6 kids. We all have 2 kids and we switch houses every third Friday. We bounce around. And then so that's nice because you only have to cook one Friday and then you get 2 Fridays off. You don't have to cook. So that's been super fun. And our kids are all very similar ages. We have like ranging from a 6 month old to Johnny's 3. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
they're all very close together. And so it's utter mayhem, but I wouldn't want it any other way. So that's like one way. Again, it's like those structured things,
Hmm.
right? Because it's hard to go to dinner with every friend that you want to go to dinner with, and it's hard to like call every friend that means a lot to you because it's just hard. There's only so much time in the day. So when you can build in those structure of like, every other Saturday we're going to check in at night, or we're going to do this, dinner party thing every Friday night during the summer. Those I found to be most helpful, but it is, we talked a little bit about like what do you leave out, and I don't intentionally leave out being, connecting with my friends or, building relationships with new friends. But I find that right now, as my life currently stands, it's hard to find the time.
Yeah, I think I would love to find someone who's figured this out because I, I feel like everyone who has kids this age talks about how hard it is to maintain your friendships with your friends, also build new friendships because this is a stage in life where a lot of us have moved recently or haven't met the people in the community. The pandemic was so isolating, and so trying to find community in areas where you might not before. So that's why I love the
Yeah.
mom connection for that for you.
Yeah. And I mean, even today I was at the playground and there were like 3 other moms. They all had like similar age kids. And I proved myself right so many times and it's no one's fault, but like moms, when you're at the playground, you're not there to like connect and meet with other moms. Like 9 times out of 10, we'll just coexist and follow our kids.
Yep.
And which is fine. Again, there's no judgment. Like you're there to be with your kid and to make sure they're safe. Like, again, there's no judgment. But this idea that we all have similar age kids, like we should at least know each other's names. Like maybe it's like this like long lost friendship that would be so great. And so that it really, I want the mom connection to make it easy to make friends, not make it awkward or embarrassing to like, hey, like I'm Caroline, like, can I have your number? Like people don't do that.
Yeah.
And so with the mom connection, it's just like, come to this event. Again, come with a friend or not. And hopefully you meet, at least 2 people. Actually, one of my favorite stories. So at the last Mom Talk event, these 2 women connected over like a extreme interest in the royal family. And it was about to be the coronation. And they had just met each other. And like a week later was the coronation. And they got together very early in the morning with their hats and
Oh,
like
I love
their
that.
PJs for like a viewing party. And again, those are the things like they would have never met each other. I mean, maybe they would have, but life
You
hasn't. They probably
accelerated
wouldn't
it.
have.
Yeah,
Right. And like it should be that easy.
I love that. In a given week, Caroline, what do you outsource? Do you outsource cleaning or grocery shopping, like Instacart, meal delivery services? Is there anything you do to kind of take some of that load off of yourself or your partner?
I was so against outsourcing cleaning for so long. And it's like that little stubborn piece of me that I was like, I can do this. Like, I don't want to spend, X amount of money to do something that, I can do or I'm fine, I'm okay with. I don't love cleaning, but I didn't like hate it. I'm very fiscally conservative and responsible. Like I grew up dotting my I's and crossing my T's and like being really conscious about money. And that's how I was raised. And so like the idea of spending money on something that I could do was like, but long story short, my husband once for like a birthday gift or I forget what gift it was, he like got me like he was like the cleaners are coming. And that's all it took. Like one time they came once and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is so nice." So they do come every other week. They just came on Friday and the only frustrating part about it is like the house very quickly goes back to mayhem. Like Maeve emptied out her whole scrambled eggs thing today. And I was like, I just thought about the cleaners. I'm like, no, they just were here. But it's so helpful. I mean, again,
Mhm.
like I'm not going to get out a vacuum every other week. So that is one thing I outsource. And we have wonderful cleaners and they're awesome. Uh, Sometimes I do Feast and Fettle, which is a meal delivery service
Yep.
and they deliver to Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. They're actually based in Rhode Island, and it's really delicious. It's healthy. It's a little bit on the expensive side. I mean, all those things, are. It's a luxury to be able to do that and to, you know, truly take meal prep out of the picture. What I love about it is I often like will tend to eat that food for lunch more than
Mhm.
dinner
Yep.
and just have like easy stuff for lunch because again, when I'm cramming like my workday into a consolidated time, I don't have time to like have a long lunch or to like spend even 15 minutes like making myself a sandwich.
Mhm.
And so I'll either like not eat, which is not good, or I'll eat something crappy, which is not good. So that's sometimes what I like to do. I probably do it once per month.
Mhm.
And then I don't outsource grocery shopping only because I don't know. I don't know. I
I'm
did it a
too
lot during
picky.
the pandemic.
I'm too picky with my produce to outsource grocery shopping unless I'm in a
Yeah.
real bind. So I get
Yeah.
it, but I also understand the benefit because during COVID, I also did Instacart all the time. But now that Amazon charges you $15 to deliver Instacart or whatever, Amazon Prime, whatever it is, anyways, I'm like, I'm not paying $15 a grocery trip for you to
Yeah.
pick out bruised vegetables.
I know. I know. It's so true. I did it a lot during the pandemic and I don't know. That's just like one thing. And I don't mind it. My daughter does love it. My mom's always made the comment. She's like, "You can't have your kids grow up and then like not go to the grocery store ever." And I'm like, "Well, I guess that is kind of true." So those are two things. So cleaning was definitely something I ended up biting the bullet on, and I've been grateful for that. Those would be our biggest things, I think.
That's awesome. And you also mentioned being conscious about money. How do you guys budget or how do you guys talk about budgeting on a daily basis? I'm sourcing ideas as this is my personal 2023 goal.
Ooh, resolution. So it's tough. I'm definitely more. I mean, I've talked about some opposites related to me and my husband. We definitely balance each other out, but he's not necessarily more of a spender, but he's more, liberal with his spending and not as conscious. And I'm definitely more anal retentive about money and about credit cards and about taxes and all the stuff, which is probably not good for my, heart rate and health. But anyway, that's just the way I'm wired. So I used to in one day, and again, this went by the wayside because who has time for this? But I used to like have a self-made Excel spreadsheet where I would like literally type in it was like Mint. but before Mint,
Yeah.
like where I would budget, I would be like gas, like $23. I don't know. I don't know how I had the time to do that. And I would see, okay, this is my paycheck and this is what was coming out. I'm like, there are apps that automate that, but I was not technologically savvy. So long story short, we don't budget per se, but I do like monitor my credit card statements closely. To be honest, I spent a lot less money than I did like pre-kids because I don't have time to like go out and shop. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have time to go online and shop. Like I just only have time to buy the things that like we need that week.
Yep.
Amazon, I guess, is like a different story, but one thing I will say is during the pandemic, one of the things that we did use was called Financial Gym. They're out of New York City, I believe, and they are like tech. They're a company that focuses on financial planning and but doing so in a trendy way, in a way that's like for our demographic and our age group. And so you get paired with a trainer. Everything is like a gym
Cool.
metaphor. And you have like goals, not weight goals, but like goals related to spending. And so when we were trying to buy our house during the pandemic and we had just had a child, and so we were budgeting for like spending more money on
Yep.
childcare and diapers and all that stuff, and we were trying to buy a house, we needed cash. And then my husband was finishing paying off his college debt, and they just like kind of took everything, all of those variables, and synthesized them and analyzed them, and then gave us like a report of like, this is how much you should put towards college, bringing down your college debt. And this is how much you should be saving for, this thing that you want to buy a house.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah. I feel like every tool kind of misses the mark in some way. And we're just trying to figure out how to be better about budgeting. Even it's not even the like counting the pennies and cents. It's just like not looking at your bank account and being like, where did everything go and why? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's my 2023 goal for the rest of the year. Still working on it, but Financial Gym, I'll look into them.
Yeah. And there's even, this idea of what are the monthly expenses that are
Yeah.
getting taken out every month that you don't realize?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Subscriptions. And I've been using Copilot, and I think it does a really good job of outlining all of the subscriptions and the recurring fees that we're spending. But then it has a hard time connecting to my bank account. So it doesn't connect the like actual activity on that on a daily basis. So everything's got its drawbacks, but working on
right.
it. So Caroline, if you were to design your ideal day, what would that look like? And then how often does that day actually happen?
Long story short, it would be spending half the day with my kids because I love spending time with them. Half the day doing what I love of working and being in education, but finding these really amazing entrepreneurs who are educators who are building these schools that like I would want to send my own kids to. So I love that aspect. I love the strategy behind it. I love the event planning behind it. I love all of it. So half day working and then a really healthy dose of a great evening. The kids are healthy and fed and they're not fighting and they go to bed really easily. And then my husband and I get to spend time with each other. I would say that happens in terms of the latter part because the first chunk, like, I mean, happens twice a week in terms of the work week. The latter part probably only happens like 10% of the time. I mean, it's all about expectations and
Mm-hmm.
like versus reality. If you expect dinner and everything to be hard, then when it is hard, you're like, yeah, like I got this, I can do this. It's gonna be bedtime before we know it. And it's when you don't expect it to be hard and it is hard, that's where I feel like it really hurts. It's hard. It's hard for moms.
Yeah. I think we all have had so many of those days.
Right. I mean, even think about labor and delivery or like that first day of daycare drop off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be hard. And when it is hard, like you push on through, it's just a little bit easier when you expect that. But it's those, you go to bed at 9 p.m. and you're so proud of yourself. You get to bed and
And someone's
then
screaming.
they have a fever, right? Or
Yeah.
there's an ear infection and you're like, I was just trying to do something for myself. Or you go to a holiday and you're so excited it's finally the holidays and there's family drama, right? It's those
Mhm.
moments where we don't expect things they throw us more for a loop, because it forces us to be flexible, and we already have to be flexible every single minute of every day as moms.
Mhm.
And so, yeah,
Ugh, love it.
all the things.
All the things. Caroline, where can people learn more about you, about the Mom Connection, and follow along?
Great. So www.themomconnection.co, leave off the m.co. That's my website. I have a sign up there. I do a weekly newsletter blog on Sunday, and I just share stories about motherhood. So one of the things I'll be sharing about soon is my husband and I are going to Ireland for 5 weeks with our kids. We're doing a home exchange. So true holiday, like the movie The Holiday, where the Irish family is coming to our house, we're going to their house, and we're swapping homes for 5 weeks. I'm going to be managing to work somehow virtually with my kids in Irish daycare. I like laugh because it sounds so ridiculous because I'm like, why am I setting myself up for this? Um, it's going to be a trip. It's not going to be a vacation, and I'm totally okay with that.
It's all about expectations.
I'm totally excited for them to just like run in like an Irish field, like
And their Aran knit
with sheep.
sweaters.
Yes, yes, exactly. With their yeah. So we'll see how it is. I'm gonna report every Sunday, but I'm really excited. This is definitely something my husband wanted to go for like 6 months, and I was like, I don't know if I could be in Ireland away from everything for 6 months. So we compromised on 1 month. And yeah, so I'm really excited. So the momconnection.co, and then I'm on Instagram at that same, the momconnection.co. So even if you're not in the North Shore, I have some virtual offerings. I have a virtual talk coming up on June 14th with Dr. Jacqueline Nessie. She's a Brown University professor and a clinical psychologist, and she writes a blog every week. She writes like a real blog, like a true research blog every week called Techno Sapiens. And it's all about tech, kids, and mental health. And it's incredible. I read it every week. Some of the recent ones that she wrote are, should I let my son play Fortnite? Which my kid is not old enough to play Fortnite, but he probably will be in like 5 years, and that scares me. Or smartphone alternatives for your kids. Or are you addicted to social media? Or can Chat GPT do therapy? So it's like the latest buzz, and it's all things that, like, even if our kids are not on technology or on phones, like technology and phones are not going away. So the more that we can talk about it and think about it and think about how it's impacting kids and like setting our kids up for success, I'm all for it. So that's a virtual mom talk on the June 14th. You can register at themomconnection.co, and you go under offerings, and you can register for free. So I love to see everyone there, whether you have teenagers or not. Again, technology, kids, mental health. It'll be a great conversation.
That sounds interesting. I can attest that Caroline's newsletters through the Mom Connection are quick reads and always enjoyable. So I like that I can always read them in under 2 or 3 minutes, but always get something great out of them. So you should
Thank you.
subscribe. And then, Caroline, what is the favorite part of a day in your life?
I think when I'm reading with my kids at night, and those are the moments that, so much of motherhood is you're kind of waiting for the next thing. Like you're either waiting for the next milestone, or you're excited about the next birthday coming up, or you're just like trying to get to bedtime and you're like, I just want this day to go by quicker because this is really hard right now. And I find that when my kids are both, first of all, they love reading. And they're never like bickering with each other, and they just both sit like one on each leg. And I just like want those moments to never like end. And granted, I'm like, okay, time for bed and I move on. But it's always really peaceful, and they pick out funny books, and it's just really nice. And I find it's the one time during the day where I just really like it to slow down. I don't look at my clock. I don't, care for a few minutes past bedtime. And it's also, as a former teacher, joy of reading, like get your kids to love reading, but it's so true. Like it starts now and they might not understand what you're reading, but the fact that they like love looking at pictures or love stories is like a gift that you can give your kids. Like I promise you it will pay off when they're 5 and 6 and 7 and are like voracious readers. And yeah, it just starts now. So as a former elementary school teacher, the more that you can read with your kids, it's such an important lifelong skill.
I love that. They're also so snuggly at bedtime. And it's the best feeling.
I know. So true. And I'm like, good night.
See
Now
you
free time for you to go.
later.
Exactly.
Caroline, thank you so much for joining us on A Day in Her Life. I have loved recording this episode and I can't wait to share it with everyone in a few weeks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Have a great night.
You too.